Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is going to be a brief little review for Psychopaths, Episode 12. Coming back with a bang after a 2-week break and just dishing out once again a masterstroke in storytelling as far as I'm concerned, because essentially, if we go back a few reviews ago, I had said at some point I would love to be able to look into the lives of the fellow enforcers that are in the group that Akane, the sort of main character, is now commanding. And sure enough, that's exactly what we get with this episode. We have a lot of insight thrown our way in Yayoi, the female enforcer with the black ponytail, and her life prior to becoming an enforcer. I absolutely loved it. And the thing that makes this pitch perfect timing-wise is that it comes on the coattails of that big penultimate showdown between Makishima, Akane, and Kagami and the rest of the enforcers. And so we definitely have our appetites whetted to see where that story is going to go. But now we're also gaining insight into the other members of the group and how they became enforcers and so forth. Now, we're basically focusing, as I say, on Yayoi, and perfect way to start because she has probably been the most curious of the enforcers for me as a viewer, because we did get a little sense, only once really, of seeing inside the way she thinks. She basically was comforting in a previous episode the friend of a girl killed by Rikako Oryo, the murderous artistic expressionist that was manipulated into doing this by Makishima, and she goes up to the friend and comforts her and tells her to calm down. Her hue will get cloudy and all of that stuff. And sure enough, now we see why. We see that she relates to that situation by the end of this episode. But what's really fascinating is her change in demeanor. When we basically begin this episode, she is a rocker girl. She's kind of a punker chick, and she's part of a band that the Sybil system, in any case, has authorized the production of their artistic expressionism in the form of their music. Whereas we see that Yayoi is really taken, really enamored with this lead singer of another group, another musical group, who is considered unauthorized. And so basically her hue becomes cloudy. She becomes suspected of being a latent criminal. She's institutionalized, and there we see a divide between Yayoi and her friend Rina, the lead singer of this other group. Now, what's very fascinating is the fact that she still holds on to her past in her love of music. She still wants to play guitar, even inside this institution, and very realistically, they won't let her. Now, it's interesting that she just basically gets approached out of the blue one day by Kagami and Ginoza, who are looking into the area that she was once familiar with, this whole sort of, downtrodden section of the city where a lot of people are suspected to be rebels of the Sybil system, terrorists and people who will be acting out against it and so forth. And this is somewhere that Yayoi came from. This is where that club that she played music in and that she saw her friend Rina of this other band playing in. So at first, she kind of turns them away. She's like, you think I'm going to work for you guys? You think I'm going to be helpful? And Kagami, very interestingly, because he is still at this point very much an inspector and not an enforcer as yet, and we also see that his partner in crime who ends up dead, Sasayama, is still part of the group at this point. Kagami comes in and he's suave. He knows exactly how to cut through all the air and get right to Yayoi's heart by showing her guitar strings. And I think there's such a level of conflict within Yayoi to want to act on this. She basically starts to think back to Rina and trying to recapture her friendship with her, try to find her essentially, and she decides to use this situation to her benefit along those lines. Now basically we have Kagami and Sasayama going after somebody else, but we're following Yayoi mostly, and that's where the most interesting side of it is, because of course once they get to this area, Kagami has given Yayoi a dominator, and he tells her it will be authorized for her. And he's really testing her. He's trying to give her insight and experience into understanding why Sybil would dictate that she could become an enforcer. This is exactly what led Kagami to her in the first place, to think that she could become an enforcer because it was dictated by the Sybil system. And it's very intriguing that when she confronts this girl, Rina, she does find her at the club as she suspects she will, that Rina has turned into somewhat of a terrorist. She has these explosive devices. She considers the music she's producing, which is also considered by Sybil to be unauthorized, as a war cry against the Sybil system. This is a really intriguing underthread that's been going throughout this system as far as how artistic expression can both be a form of expression but also a poison to the soul. Not only will it free you, but it could also taint you. And how much of a big impact this artistic expression is against the sort of lemming man mandated Sybil system. There are people like Makishima, like Rikako Oryo, and like this singer Rina, who are upset with this, who feel like humanity is just basically brain dead fools now for being manipulated so easily into being told how to live their lives by machination, by computers, by artificial intelligence. They just go with the flow and they never question it. And you have these artists, these people saying, what are you guys thinking? This is wrong. We need to fight against this. So this comes smack, into the brick wall of Yayoi. She is just a bundle of conflict when she reapproaches this friend of hers and sees her for the betrayer she is, that she has become a terrorist. Now, much to my surprise, there comes a point where Yayoi turns around and puts that dominator on her friend, and you see that, it's actually not authorized for her use. And we find out that Kagami was really testing her to basically see if she could, like the Sybil system dictated, become an enforcer. And after this, it's very intriguing that Kagami, much like Makishima had in the previous episode, discusses the will to overpower what the Sybil system dictates as far as the side of life that Yayoi would have had to spend out institutionalized if she didn't decide to become an enforcer. And we see her just vehemently decide to become one in the wake of this betrayal she's experienced from this girl Rina, who she admired, who she maybe had a romantic fascination with. And it's just empowering to see the change of command in her own life that she has now affected on her own life. She is going to become an enforcer because it's her choice. She wasn't pushed into it by the Sybil system. She is taking control, and that's very intriguing because the biggest complaint Rina had against her was, if she becomes an enforcer, it's because she's authorized. Maybe it's Yayoi, succumbing to what the Sybil system dictates. But I think very empowering, as I say, Yayoi made that decision for herself. She wants to be the enforcer. She says, I will become an enforcer, stunning Kagami and making him silent. Same with Sasayama. And it's just chilling to see the determination in her eyes when she says this. Now, the question I have at the end of all this is, will we see this Rina again? This girl Rina with her band and her sort of band of rogues, these rebels, is there another side story that we'll flash back on later that shows Yayoi and the group going after her and successfully nabbing her? Or will this Rina girl show up again, potentially as an agent for Makishima? That could be really intriguing as well. Because, of course, we know Makishima is still at large and still potentially dangerous and deadly and all of that good stuff. And in my humble opinion, it was just epically brilliant. So basically, that's going to be pretty much all I have to say on it. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of this episode, what you think of the series so far. Is it living up to your expectations? Is it blowing you away as much as it is me as a viewer? And yeah, I hope you're all doing well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.